Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the long-term effects of growing up with domestic violence.
Okay.
And the book we're going to be looking at is called Invincible: The 10 Lies You Learn Growing Up with Domestic Violence and the Truths to Set You Free.
Okay. Sounds good.
So one of the first things that really got me, I was really shocked by this, was, UNICEF estimates that 1 billion people alive today experience domestic violence as children.
Wow. That's a staggering number.
It really is a lot.
Yeah.
And this book is going to be looking at a lot of the lies that these individuals often internalize.
Right.
Things like guilt, resentment, sadness, loneliness. And it offers pathways to unlearn those lies and embrace more empowering truths.
Well, it's fascinating how these early experiences can shape our view of the world, right?
Yeah.
And this book, it calls them lies, but what they really are the negative beliefs that we internalize as a result of our experiences.
Right.
And they outline 10 of them. But let's just start with one that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Okay.
Feeling guilty.
Yeah, guilt is a big one. And the book talks about a guy named Martin, and he felt responsible for his parents' neglectful behavior.
Really?
He would actually get ulcers as a kid.
Wow.
From worrying so much about it and just thinking it was his fault that his parents were struggling.
It really shows you how a child's developing mind can lead to these feelings of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't really have the capacity to understand complex adult situations.
Right.
And especially when there's violence involved.
Yeah.
But luckily, Martin had an uncle and a teacher that would show him kindness, even just in brief interactions.
Yeah.
And this helped him to see that this was not his fault. It wasn't his burden to bear.
It's amazing how these little acts of kindness from adults can have such a profound impact on a child's life, especially when they're going through something so difficult.
Absolutely. And these positive interactions counter the negative messages that they're getting at home.
Right.
And it reinforces that truth that it's not their fault.
Right.
And the book really drives this point home. It's never the child's fault.
Yeah.
That is so crucial for anyone who's carrying that guilt from their past.
Yeah, it's so important to release that and really recognize that kids are never responsible for the actions of adults.
Right.
So let's move on and talk about resentment.
Okay.
The book shares Janine's story, who held a lot of anger toward her parents, especially her father, who was abusive.
Yeah, that's an experience that sadly is not uncommon, right?
Right.
Witnessing that violence, especially from a parent, creates those deep wounds, and it fuels that resentment that can linger on for years.
Right.
It keeps you trapped in the past.
Yeah.
And it really prevents you from moving forward.
Yeah, and I thought it was really inspiring that Janine found a way to tap into compassion and forgiveness.
Wow.
And it wasn't because her father changed or anything, but she had a journey of her own. Her mother was battling cancer.
Oh, wow.
And that gave her a new perspective.
It's like they say, resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
Wow, yeah.
So it's really only when we understand that forgiveness is about releasing ourselves from the pain that we can actually move on.
That's a powerful way to put it. So it's not condoning what happened, but it's finding a way to free yourself from the bitterness.
Yeah.
So now the book also looks at sadness, and that's a feeling that is just kind of woven into the fabric of these childhood experiences.
Absolutely.
And the author himself actually shares a kind of touching anecdote about his mom reading Goodnight Moon.
Okay.
And it was a sweet memory, but it's also tinged with sadness because of what was going on in his life at the time.
Yeah. You see, those bittersweet feelings are very common for children who've grown up with domestic violence.
Right.
Happy moments are often overshadowed by that fear and that uncertainty.
Right.
You never know when things might erupt again.
Yeah. The book also shares Fiona's story, and she battled sadness for a long time. But she found some comfort and some solace in volunteering at a children's hospital, and helping others actually helped her to shift from focusing on her own pain to actually feeling gratitude for what she did have.
Fiona's experience really highlights the transformative power of giving.
Yeah.
Even when you feel like you have nothing to offer.
Yeah.
When we focus on helping others, we shift that perspective outwards. We connect with something larger than ourselves.
Right.
And we start to appreciate the good things in our own lives.
That really resonates with me. There's something so empowering about helping others, especially when you're feeling down.
It's a beautiful paradox, isn't it? Giving, even when you feel empty, can fill you up in these unexpected ways.
Okay, let's move on and talk about a feeling that resonates with, I think, so many people, whether or not they grew up with domestic violence, feeling alone.
Yeah, and that feeling of isolation is especially strong for children who've experienced this type of trauma. Their trust is shattered, and it's really hard to believe that anyone could truly understand their pain.
And the book talks about Eleanor, and she, even though she had a loving boyfriend and good relationships with her parents, had friends, she always felt alone. No matter how much support she had, she just couldn't shake that feeling.
Yeah, Eleanor's experience really shows how those wounds of childhood run deep.
Yeah.
Even with support, that feeling of isolation can linger.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine growing up in an environment where the people who are supposed to be protecting you are the source of fear and uncertainty. It's no wonder trust becomes such a major issue.
That makes so much sense. It's like they're always on high alert, waiting for the other shoe to drop, even in situations that are completely safe.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like their internal alarm system is constantly going off, making it really hard to relax and feel secure.
Right. But the book offers hope. It talks about the story of PepsiCo CEO Indra Nooyi, and she found that, despite her own trust issues, she found that assuming positive intent in her interactions helped her to overcome those barriers.
It's a powerful reminder that we can actively choose to challenge our negative assumptions and open ourselves up to connection.
Right.
Instead of expecting the worst, what if we started assuming the best?
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And the book emphasizes it all starts with trusting ourselves, recognizing our own strengths and values.
Yeah.
That self-trust then becomes the foundation for trusting others.
So important. Knowing your true nature is key to building that self-trust and then extending that trust outwards.
Now let's talk about anger.
Okay.
It's a universal emotion, but for those who've experienced domestic violence, it can be particularly challenging to manage.
Yeah, and that's because anger is often a surface emotion. Masking deeper feelings like hurt or fear, or even just that sense of feeling insignificant.
Right. And we hear Jeremy's story in the book. He witnessed his mother's pain and developed some serious anger issues as a result.
And did he ever talk about the root of that anger? What was it stemming from?
Yeah, he felt like he wasn't big enough or strong enough to protect her, and that fueled a lot of rage.
Makes sense. It's heartbreaking to think about the impact this has on children,
Yeah.
But the good news is that the book doesn't just leave us with these heavy lies.
Right.
It offers real stories of people who have broken free and found their way to some powerful truths.
Right.
And it's not about suppressing the anger or pretending it's not there. It's about learning to harness that energy.
Okay.
And turning it into something positive.
So it's recognizing the anger but not letting it control you.
Exactly.
Okay. The book introduces us to Adam, and he channeled his anger into his career.
Oh, interesting.
And he turned it into a driving force for success, but initially it almost cost him everything.
Wow. So how did he manage to turn it around? What was his secret, I guess?
I mean, it sounds like, Adam's story shows how anger, while powerful, can be really destructive if it's left unchecked.
Yeah.
So it's important to find healthy ways to express it.
Sure.
And for him, that was through his work.
Okay.
He found a positive outlet, and he actually transformed his anger into passion and purpose.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's incredible how he was able to turn something so potentially negative into a force for good.
Yeah. And speaking of tools, I love how the book introduces the DATA acronym as a practical way to manage anger.
DATA.
Yeah. So D, decide what you are feeling.
Okay.
A, ask yourself, what else can I assume about this situation?
Got it.
T, remember the truth. You can redirect anger's energy.
Okay.
And A, apply that energy to your passions.
I love that. It's like taking that raw energy and channeling it into something constructive and life-affirming.
Yeah.
We don't have to be victims of our anger. We can choose to become the masters of it.
Right. So instead of letting anger control us, we can learn to use it as fuel for positive change.
I love that.
Okay, so we've covered guilt, resentment, sadness, feeling alone, and anger. Let's shift gears and talk about a feeling that I think can be really tough to shake.
Okay.
And that is hopelessness.
Yeah, hopelessness is a common feeling for those who've grown up with domestic violence. It's like seeing that destructive side of human nature firsthand.
Right.
Can lead you to believe that things will never get better.
The book shares Chelsea's story, and she witnessed something really horrific. She actually witnessed her dad shoot and kill a neighbor who was trying to protect her mom during a violent fight.
Oh.
I can't even imagine, how something like that could make a person feel.
Yeah, it's crucial to acknowledge the profound impact of that kind of trauma. Experiencing something that intense can completely shatter a child's sense of safety and security.
Yeah.
But Chelsea's story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, we have the capacity for growth and healing.
Yeah, it's like she found a way to rise from the ashes and create something meaningful from her pain.
Exactly. And despite her circumstances, Chelsea found purpose in helping others. She even felt guided towards a higher purpose.
And that brings up, this idea of post-traumatic growth, which the book talks about.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
So post-traumatic growth is this amazing phenomenon where people who've experienced trauma can actually emerge stronger.
Okay.
And with a deeper appreciation for life. It's not about forgetting or minimizing the pain, but it's about finding meaning and purpose in spite of it.
Okay. And the book quotes psychologist Stephen Joseph.
Okay.
And he said that post-traumatic stress is a natural process of adapting to adversity, but it's also the beginning of a transformative journey.
Right. It's about recognizing that suffering can be a catalyst for profound personal growth.
Right.
It's about resilience and the ability to find meaning even in the face of immense pain.
And Chelsea's story really, illustrates this perfectly. Even though her external situation didn't magically change, she experienced a powerful internal shift, She went from feeling completely hopeless to believing that she was destined for something more, that she had a mission to fulfill.
And that shift in perspective can be everything.
Right.
Realizing that we have the power to choose how we respond to our experiences.
Yeah.
That even in the face of adversity, we can find the strength to heal and grow.
Okay. So next we have the lie of worthlessness.
Okay.
And this is sadly so common for people who've experienced domestic violence.
Yeah, and feeling worthless is a direct result of the emotional abuse and neglect that often accompanies domestic violence.
Right.
Children are constantly told, either directly or indirectly, that they're not good enough, that they're a burden,
Yeah. And the book mentions Caroline's story, and she actually struggled to share her experiences because she felt like they weren't bad enough to warrant attention.
Oh, wow.
She was constantly apologizing for her feelings as if they were an inconvenience.
It just shows how insidious emotional abuse can be. It erodes your sense of self-worth until you believe that your feelings and experiences are invalid.
It's like you're always seeking validation from others because you don't believe in your own inherent worth.
It's a vicious cycle that can be so hard to break.
Right.
But the key is to remember that your worth is inherent.
Right.
You're valuable simply because you exist. You don't have to earn it.
Yeah.
You don't have to prove it to anyone.
So now fear.
Okay.
Fear. While we all experience fear, for those who've grown up with domestic violence, it can be completely consuming.
Right. Because their childhoods were marked by unpredictability and danger.
Yeah.
They never knew when the next outburst might occur, so they lived in this constant state of hypervigilance.
Right.
It's like their fight or flight response was constantly activated.
Right.
Which can have long-term effects on both mental and physical health.
Yeah. The book talks about how this constant state of stress can lead to anxiety, depression, even physical health problems later in life.
Right. It's almost like their bodies are always in survival mode, even when there's no immediate danger present.
Right. And the book shares Peyton's story, and she's an interesting case because from the outside, she seemed to have it all together. She was beautiful, successful, even competed in beauty pageants.
Wow.
But underneath it all, she was struggling with intense fear and anxiety.
Really?
Yeah.
Peyton's story reminds us that we can't always judge a book by its cover. We never know what battles someone might be fighting internally.
Right.
And for those who've experienced domestic violence, those battles can be especially fierce.
Right. And she mentioned that, seemingly small things could trigger her fear. Mm-hmm. A sudden noise, someone getting too close. It's like she was constantly reliving the trauma of her past.
That's a common symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
Traumatic experiences can be embedded in the nervous system so that even seemingly harmless triggers can evoke that intense fear and anxiety.
But what I admire about her story is that she didn't let fear control her. She used those beauty pageants as a way to confront her fears and build confidence.
That's turning adversity into an opportunity for growth.
Right.
stepping outside of her comfort zone and facing her fears head on allowed Peyton to reclaim her power.
Right.
And create a new narrative for herself.
And preparation was key for her. She, worked on her singing and public speaking, even how to walk with confidence. It's like she meticulously planned for every challenge so that she'd feel more in control.
That's a great point.
Right.
Preparation can be a powerful antidote to fear.
Yeah.
When we feel prepared, we're less likely to be overwhelmed by anxiety.
Right.
And more likely to face those challenges head on.
And speaking of confidence, the book mentions some fascinating research by Harvard professor Amy Cuddy on power posing.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. Have you tried it?
I have. It's amazing how much our physical bodies can impact our mental and emotional state.
Right.
So if you're ever feeling anxious, try striking a power pose for a few minutes.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by the results.
It's incredible. So now on to a feeling I think we all experience to some degree. And that is self-consciousness.
Yeah.
Self-consciousness.
Self-consciousness often comes from a fear of judgment or rejection.
Right.
And for those who've grown up with domestic violence, that fear can be magnified because of those internalized negative messages that they received as children.
It's like you start to believe that you're not good enough.
Right.
You're not worthy of love and acceptance.
Right.
And that shows up in how you see yourself and interact with the world.
It's crucial to remember that attractiveness is about so much more than just physical appearance.
Yeah.
It's about confidence, kindness, intelligence, humor,
right.
All those qualities that make us unique.
And the book emphasizes, if we're caught up in those lies, feeling guilty, resentful, sad, alone,
right.
It becomes almost impossible to feel truly good enough, to feel genuinely attractive.
Those negative beliefs distort your self-image, and it becomes hard to see yourself clearly.
Right. The book shares Emily's story, and she really struggled with feeling self-conscious, particularly in her relationships.
Okay.
And it turned out that her mom had also grown up with domestic violence and had low self-esteem, which impacted the kind of partners Emily chose.
Emily's story is a reminder of how these patterns can repeat themselves across generations.
Right.
If you haven't healed from your own wounds, you're more likely to attract partners who mirror those patterns.
Right. It's like subconsciously we're trying to recreate what feels familiar.
Right.
Even if that familiar was hurtful.
Exactly. It's a way of making sense of the past.
Yeah.
Maybe even trying to heal it through repetition. But true healing involves recognizing those patterns and choosing partners who support our growth and well-being.
And the book talks about how our brains are wired for connection. We're naturally drawn to others.
Right.
But if we don't feel worthy of love, we might settle for partners who reinforce our negative beliefs.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why it's crucial to address those underlying emotional wounds.
Yeah.
When those wounds are healed, we can start making choices that align with our true desires.
Right. Emily's story also shows the impact of, external factors like poverty and social stigma.
Yeah.
Her family struggled financially, and she was often teased about her clothes.
Oh, wow.
Which made her feel even more self-conscious.
Poverty and social stigma can compound the challenges for those who've experienced domestic violence.
Right.
The lack of resources and support, coupled with that potential discrimination and bullying, can further damage self-esteem.
Right. And all of this contributed to Emily actually developing an eating disorder.
It's like she was trying to control something in her life when everything else felt so chaotic.
Yeah.
Eating disorders are often a way to cope with overwhelming emotions and trauma. They might provide a temporary sense of control, but they ultimately lead to more problems.
Right. And it wasn't until Emily saw those same patterns of violence repeating in her own relationships that she knew she had to make a change. It was like she finally realized the cycle had to stop with her.
That's a powerful moment of awakening.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
Seeing the potential consequences in the lives of those we love before we're ready to make a real change.
And that's where awareness comes in.
Yeah.
Once Emily understood the connection between her childhood experiences and her current struggles,
yeah,
she could start breaking free.
Awareness is always the first step.
Right.
When we understand why we feel and behave the way we do,
right,
we can begin to make conscious choices
that
are in line with our values.
Yeah.
And create a more fulfilling life.
Right. It's about recognizing the patterns.
Exactly.
And choosing to do things differently.
It's about empowerment.
Right.
And taking control of our lives.
All right. So we've talked about a lot of these really heavy things, but there's one more lie we need to address. And this is the feeling of being unloved.
Yeah. This one really hits deep.
Yeah.
Because, everyone everyone have that fundamental need to feel loved and accepted.
Right.
But for those who've grown up with the domestic violence, it can be so hard to believe that they are worthy of love.
Yeah. It's almost like they've built a wall around their heart to protect themselves from getting hurt again.
Exactly. And while that wall might provide a sense of safety, it also blocks out genuine connection and intimacy.
Yeah.
So they might even push away the very thing that they crave the most.
Yeah, it's really sad. And the book starts this section with kind of a poignant story from the author's own life.
Okay.
And he talks about this memory of his mom reading Goodnight Moon to him.
Oh, wow.
And it was a comforting memory, but it was also a reminder of that inconsistency he experienced growing up, right? Those peaceful moments always overshadowed by the threat of violence.
Yeah, that inconsistency is a hallmark of domestic violence.
Right.
You know, those shifts between moments of love and moments of fear.
Yeah.
Creates real challenges when it comes to developing healthy attachment styles.
Right.
It makes it hard to trust that love can be constant and safe.
The book introduces us to Amanda, and she grew up in a home where her parents fought constantly.
Okay.
But there wasn't physical abuse. It was more emotional neglect.
Okay.
And she said she felt like she could survive without feelings or love or anything.
Amanda's story is a reminder that domestic violence isn't always physical, right?
Right.
Emotional neglect and verbal abuse can be just as damaging.
Right.
Especially to a child's developing sense of self-worth.
And she became incredibly adaptable. You know, she learned to read the room, adjust her behavior to avoid conflict.
That's common for children in these situations, right?
Yeah.
It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
You know, they become hyper aware of their surroundings,
Right.
constantly trying to anticipate and avoid their parents' anger.
Right.
But this can also lead to a disconnect from their own emotions and needs.
Right.
You know, they're so focused on pleasing others that they lose touch with themselves.
And eventually Amanda realized that this adaptability came at a cost, right? She was missing out on genuine connection, love, intimacy, all those things that make life rich and meaningful.
It's a trade-off that many make without even realizing it.
Right.
But the good news is that we can always choose to change those patterns.
And that's exactly what Amanda did.
Really?
She decided to try something different.
Ouch.
She started giving love and appreciation to others.
That's a beautiful example of taking control of your own happiness. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to wait for someone else to give you love.
Yeah.
You be the source of it.
And what's amazing is the more she gave, the more she received.
That's the magic of giving without expectation.
Yeah.
It's like this beautiful cycle where the love you put out into the world finds its way back to you.
Right. So instead of focusing on feeling unloved, the key is to cultivate love within ourselves and then share it with others.
Exactly. The truth is, you are loved. Love is all around us. It's within us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need to open our hearts to receive it.
I love that.
You know, there's another part of this book that I found incredibly inspiring.
Okay.
The author was working with a company, and he had just met the founder, and they were talking, and he found out that this founder had also grown up with domestic violence.
Really?
Yeah. And that chance encounter led to a conversation about the work that this founder was doing through his foundation called CDV Children of Domestic Violence.
Okay.
And it was a pivotal moment for the author.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time he had shared his own experience with anyone outside of his family.
It's amazing how those unexpected connections can lead to these profound moments of understanding and support.
It was such a powerful experience for the author that he actually created his own foundation called Makers of Memories to provide trips for children who've been through similar experiences.
That's so heartwarming. He wanted to create these opportunities for these kids to experience joy and wonder.
He talks about taking a group of children to Walt Disney World.
Okay.
And they were watching the fireworks show Wishes, and there's that part where a star shoots over Cinderella's castle.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to make a wish.
Uh-huh.
And the author asked the 6-year-old boy sitting next to him, "What's your wish?" And the boy replied, "I wish they would stop hurting each other."
Wow, that just gave me chills.
It's a reminder that even in a place like Disney World,
Right.
these kids are still carrying the weight of their experiences.
Right. And that experience fueled the author's commitment to really address domestic violence, you know? He realized that while creating happy memories was important, these kids needed more than just temporary escapes.
Absolutely.
They needed tools and resources to help them heal.
So what did he do?
Well, he organized a summit of academics, neuroscientists, researchers.
Wow.
And he wanted to bridge the gap between research and real-world solutions.
That's awesome. It's so important to have that collaboration between the people who are doing the research and the people who are actually working with those affected by these issues.
Yeah, and that summit, that was a turning point because the experts identified these 10 common emotions that are experienced by people who've grown up with domestic violence, the 10 lies that we've been talking about. And they realized that these feelings were often rooted in beliefs that had been internalized during childhood.
Yeah.
And so they recognized that by understanding these patterns,
Right.
they could develop more effective ways to help people heal.
It's like they finally gave a name to those feelings that have been swirling around for so long.
Right.
That validation alone can be so powerful.
Exactly. Yeah. Naming your emotions is the first step toward understanding and processing them. And that summit eventually led to the creation of the Change a Life program.
Wow. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's this collaboration between, the Authors Foundation, UNICEF, and some leading scholars.
Okay.
And this program trains adults to raise awareness and deliver these key messages to those who are still living with domestic violence.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's about empowering adults to become agents of change, breaking the cycle of violence, and creating a safer world for children.
It's inspiring to see how one person's passion can create such a powerful movement,
Yeah.
It really shows the ripple effect of healing.
Right.
When we heal ourselves, we can help heal others.
Yeah. So we've explored these 10 lies and the truths that can set us free. This deep dive has been quite a journey. It's important to remember that unlearning these deeply ingrained beliefs, it takes time and effort.
Right.
But the reward is a life of freedom and authenticity.
The book isn't a quick fix, but it's a guide for that lifelong journey of healing and transformation.
Yeah.
It's about moving from surviving to thriving.
I love that. It's about becoming the best version of yourself, despite the challenges you've faced.
Before we wrap up, I want to share one final thought from the book.
Okay.
The author talks about giving his mother a copy of Goodnight Moon, the book that she used to read to him as a child.
Yeah.
And it was a symbol of their shared journey, a reminder of the love that was always present, even amidst the chaos.
Yeah, like a beautiful illustration of the healing power of forgiveness and reconciliation.
It's a reminder that even the most fractured relationships can be mended, and that love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener?
Yeah.
If any of these stories resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in any of these lies, remember, you are not alone.
You are not alone.
There's hope and there's a path towards healing and freedom.
This book, Invincible, is filled with more stories, insights, and tools to help you on that journey. And the author's organization, CDV, offers resources for anyone affected by domestic violence.
If you feel inspired to learn more or take action, please explore these resources.
As we conclude our deep dive, take a moment to reflect.
Yeah.
What lies have you internalized? What truths are calling to be embraced? And what steps can you take today to move toward a life of healing and wholeness?
Remember, you are not alone, you are loved, and you have the power to create a life beyond your wildest dreams.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.